a race of strategy and overtakes in Austria, as the second race of the first triple header of the season was fairly straightforward for Max Verstappen and Red Bull. As a result, Max has now extended his lead over Lewis Hamilton to 19 points. Almost a full race win now. There is a lot to talk about, so here are my takeaways from the 2021 Styrian Grand Prix. This is Nikhil the Geeky Nomad, and welcome to another episode of the F1 Capsule. So, without further ado, let's get started! Max Verstappen had a relatively quiet and straightforward Grand Prix this weekend, as he was hardly challenged throughout the race. Over the last 3-4 races, both Max and Red Bull seem to have been far superior, and that includes France, where Mercedes was expected to be the strongest car. Nevertheless, this is now turning out to be a two-horse race between Max and Lewis, with Max being more consistent out of the two, at least this season. In fact, Max also seems far more calm and composed than any of his previous seasons. In all the races that he has finished this year, he has either placed first or second, and as a result of this consistent performance, he is now leading the Drivers' Championship. As I mentioned earlier, by almost a race win between the two right now. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff suggested that the defending champions will not be bringing any more developments to the car after the race. Lewis Hamilton, on the other hand, feels that if they are to challenge for the World Championship this year, they need to bring more developments to the car. Another driver who has been consistently performing for his team is Lando Norris. This season, it is almost a given that Lando Norris will be finishing as the best non-Mercedes or non-Red Bull driver. He has been driving as well as ever, and that is very impressive indeed. Delivering week in and week out when it matters is difficult in any sport, but in F1, there are so many factors that can affect your weekend, which is why consistency is what matters the most. But on the other side of the garage, it is another kind of consistency that is a cause for concern for McLaren. Unlike the other drivers who have switched teams this year, almost all of them are coming up to speed with their new cars and teams. But Daniel Ricciardo is still struggling. His poor form has been the biggest mystery of Formula 1 this year. What is also interesting is that he did not take this long to start performing when he moved to Renault from Red Bull. The Australian has had no answers, and 8 races is more than enough time to come up to grips with the new car, especially for a driver as good as Ricciardo. The pressure is mounting, and Ricciardo has to find a way to turn things around and quickly. So this brings me to my third takeaway from the Styrian Grand Prix. As the leaders sped away into the distance, we were able to witness the strategy wars of the number 2 drivers as they continued to battle for their teams and teammates who are the championship contenders. After a botched up pit stop that saw Bottas overtake Perez, Red Bull once again brought Perez into the pits for a second pit stop to go out and hunt Bottas down for the third place finish. And Perez almost pulled it off as well, as he brought the over 20-second gap to Bottas after the second pit stop down to 5/10. Maybe another lap and Perez would have overtaken him. This was a gutsy move on Red Bull's part, and they almost pulled it off. Red Bull now has a 40-point lead over Mercedes in the Constructors' Championship, as both the cars are now in play and Red Bull can play the strategy wars with Mercedes. Other than the Mercedes and Red Bull rivalry this season, it is McLaren and Ferrari who will be fighting it out for the best of the rest title. Following Ferrari's disaster in Paul Ricard, this time around at the Styrian Grand Prix, the team found some relief. But in the initial part of the race, it did seem like a disaster once again. When on the first lap, Charles had contact not only once but twice. But after this initial clumsiness and 2 stops later, Charles did have the race pace on fresher tyres that saw him recover to 7th position. Carlos Sainz went long in the first stint and managed a respectable 6th place finish behind Lando Norris. This meant that Ferrari as a team scored 14 points to McLaren's 10. Straight line speed remains Ferrari's biggest weakness this season. But in this battle, because the Ferrari boys were able to get two cars in the points, they were able to beat McLaren even though McLaren had the stronger car of the two. This will be an interesting battle to see as the season progresses. George Russell was great in France, but he was even better at the Styrian Grand Prix. The Williams driver missed out on a Q3 appearance by 8 thousandths of a second after an outstanding lap in the second part of qualifying. He was driving well in the race too and was on course to score his first points as a Williams driver, which has been a long time coming. Unfortunately, engine issues forced him to retire, although his race was already done due to a slow pit stop. Surely, points will come at some point this season. If Russell keeps performing like this, it will happen. Also, at a time when contract negotiations are happening as to whether he will drive for Mercedes in the 2022 season or not, a weekend performance like he had in Austria is surely good to have before the silly season starts. These were our takeaways from the 2021 Styrian Grand Prix. Do share your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, if you haven't, do subscribe to the channel and also hit the bell icon. Until next time, this is the Geeky Nomad signing off. Bye bye.